The shot that rang out over the desolate plains of Colorado Territory shattered the peaceful afternoon, sending Sarah Pearson into a fit of panic, as the first labor pain coincided with the sound of gunfire. April 1876 had brought an unseasonably warm spring to Trinidad, and with it, a band of desperate men who couldn't have chosen a worse moment to raid the isolated homestead. "Aaron," Sarah called out, her voice strained as she clutched her swollen belly. At 26, this would be her first child, due any day now according to the town doctor's estimation. She hadn't expected it to begin like this, with the distant thunder of hoofbeats growing louder and the unmistakable crack of rifle fire. Sarah Richardson dropped the fence post he had been setting and sprinted toward the cabin, his tall frame moving with surprising agility for a man who'd spent most of his 30 years in the saddle. The sun glinted off his sandy blonde hair as he reached for the Winchester repeating rifle he always kept within arm's reach when working the property. "Get inside, Sarah. Bolt the door," he shouted, his blue eyes scanning the horizon where dust clouds signaled approaching riders. Sarah hesitated in the doorway, one hand braced against the rough-hewn timber frame. "It's coming, Aaron. The baby's coming now." Aaron's face blanched beneath his weathered tan. "Now, God Almighty, not now." He glanced toward the approaching riders, then back at his wife. There would be no time to fetch Dr. Hoffman from town. They were on their own. "Get to the bedroom," he commanded, his voice gentler but no less urgent. "I'll hold them off." Sarah nodded, another contraction seizing her as she staggered inside. Their cabin was modest, but sturdy. Aaron had built it with his own hands after purchasing the land 2 years ago. The main room with its stone fireplace opened to a small kitchen area, and beyond that, their bedroom. It wasn't much, but it had been home since their wedding 18 months ago. Aaron bolted the door behind her, then moved quickly, checking the ammunition for his Winchester and the Colt revolver at his hip. Through the window, he could now make out 5 riders approaching fast, their faces obscured by bandanas. The Richardson homestead wasn't wealthy by any means, but it was one of the few in the area with a decent well and good grazing land. In these parts, that was enough to make a man a target. "Aaron." Sarah's cry came from the bedroom, followed by a moan of pain that twisted his gut worse than any fear of the approaching outlaws. "I'm here, Sarah," he called back, positioning himself by the window. "Just breathe like Dr. Hoffman showed you. Everything's going to be fine." The lead rider pulled up about 50 yards from the cabin, raising a hand to halt the others. Aaron recognized him immediately. Jasper Cole, a notorious rustler who'd been terrorizing the eastern Colorado Territory for months. The law hadn't been able to catch him, and those who stood against him often ended up dead. "Richardson," Cole's voice carried across the yard, "we know you've got a nice little spread here. We'll be taking your horses, your cattle, and whatever else catches our fancy." Aaron steadied his rifle on the window frame. "You'll get nothing but lead if you come any closer, Cole." A laugh erupted from the outlaw. "There's 5 of us and one of you. Don't be a fool." From the bedroom, Sarah's cries grew more intense. Aaron's jaw tightened. He had to end this quickly. "I'm counting to 3, Aaron shouted back. "Then I start shooting." The outlaws exchanged glances, clearly not expecting resistance. Most homesteaders in these parts surrendered rather than risk a fight against such odds. "1," Aaron began. Cole spurred his horse forward, the others following. "2." Aaron's finger tightened on the trigger. "3." The Winchester cracked, and the outlaw furthest to the left tumbled from his saddle. Chaos erupted as the bandits scattered, diving for cover behind the water trough and the small corral where Aaron kept his 2 prized quarter horses. Gunfire erupted from both sides, bullets splintering the wooden window frame inches from Aaron's head. "Aaron!" Sarah screamed from the bedroom. "It's coming fast!" "Hold on, sweetheart," he called back, firing another shot that caught one of the bandits in the shoulder. Cole's voice rang out again. "We're going to burn you out, Richardson. You've got 1 minute to throw down your weapons and come out." Aaron's mind raced. With Sarah in labor, they couldn't stay, but they certainly couldn't leave. He needed help, but the nearest neighbor, old Jim Tillman, was 3 miles east, and the town of Trinidad was a good hour's ride to the south. A sudden inspiration struck him. Aaron moved to the small trapdoor in the kitchen floor, a root cellar he'd dug last autumn. It wasn't deep or comfortable, but it connected to a narrow tunnel that led to the small barn 20 yards behind the house. He'd built it after hearing stories of Indian raids from the older settlers, never thinking he'd actually need to use it. Another contraction seized Sarah, her cry piercing through the gunfire outside. Aaron rushed to the bedroom, finding his wife pale and sweating, her knuckles white as she gripped the bedpost. "Sarah, listen to me. We need to move you to the root cellar." Her eyes widened in terror and pain. "I can't move, Aaron. The baby is coming now." As if to punctuate her words, a flaming arrow struck the roof of the cabin with a dull thud. Aaron glanced up, knowing the dry timber would catch quickly in the spring heat. "We don't have a choice, darling. I'm going to carry you." Sarah nodded weakly, trusting him as she always had since the day they'd met at a church social in Trinidad. He'd been new to the area, having come west from Pennsylvania after the war, looking for a fresh start. She was the daughter of the local mercantile owner, educated back east but with a pioneer spirit that matched his own. Their courtship had been brief but intense, both recognizing in each other a kindred soul willing to brave the hardships of frontier life. Aaron gathered Sarah into his arms, her body seeming both heavier and more fragile than ever before. Outside, the gunfire had momentarily ceased, a bad sign. The outlaws were likely preparing to rush the cabin or set more fires. Moving as quickly and gently as possible, Aaron carried Sarah to the kitchen and managed to lower her through the trapdoor into the cool darkness of the root cellar. The space was cramped, with shelves of preserved foods and seed potatoes lining the dirt walls. He quickly gathered blankets from a chest and made a makeshift bed for her in the corner furthest from the entrance. "I need to go back up and lead them away from the house," he explained, lighting a small lantern and placing it nearby. "Once they follow me, I'll circle around through the tunnel and come back for you." Sarah grabbed his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Don't leave me, Aaron, please." His heart nearly broke at the fear in her eyes, but he knew what needed to be done. "I have to, Sarah, for you and the baby. I'll be back before you know it." He kissed her forehead, tasting the salt of her perspiration, and climbed back up into the kitchen. Through the window, he could see 2 of the outlaws creeping toward the front of the cabin while another circled toward the back. The roof had begun to smoke where the flaming arrow had landed. Aaron took a deep breath, checking his Colt and making sure his rifle was fully loaded. Then he flung open the front door, fired 2 rapid shots that sent the approaching outlaws diving for cover, and sprinted toward the corral where his horse, Thunder, was nervously pawing the ground. "There he is," Cole shouted. "Get him." Bullets kicked up dust at Aaron's heels as he ran, zigzagging to make himself a harder target. He reached the corral, vaulted over the fence, and landed beside Thunder. In one fluid motion born of years in the saddle, he mounted the black gelding bareback and urged him through the gate. After him. Cole's voice rang out, and soon the thunder of hoofbeats told Aaron that at least 3 riders were in pursuit. Aaron led them away from the cabin, heading west toward the foothills, hoping they would believe he was making a desperate escape rather than executing a plan. Thunder responded to the slightest pressure of his knees, weaving through the sagebrush and across the rolling grassland. Once he'd put a half-mile between himself and the pursuing outlaws. Aaron cut sharply north, using a dry creek bed to mask his trail. The outlaws hesitated, momentarily confused by his change in direction. Aaron used that moment to spur Thunder into a hidden ravine he knew well from hunting trips. There, he dismounted, gave the horse a reassuring pat, and set out on foot back toward the cabin using a route hidden from the outlaws' view. Meanwhile, Sarah bit down on a folded piece of cloth to keep from crying out as another contraction seized her. They were coming faster now, barely 2 minutes apart. She had helped at births before her sisters and those of neighbors, but being on this side of the experience was terrifying, especially alone in the dim light of the root cellar. She tried to remember what her mother had told her about childbirth. "When it's time to push, your body will know," the older woman had said. And now, Sarah felt that unstoppable urge building within her. Outside the cabin, one outlaw remained, tasked with setting fire to the structure. He circled cautiously, unaware that the main targets had already escaped his grasp. Aaron approached silently from behind, having entered the tunnel from its concealed entrance near the barn. He emerged from beneath a false section of flooring in the tool shed, just in time to see the outlaw splashing kerosene against the back wall of the cabin. Aaron raised his Colt, aimed carefully, and fired. The outlaw collapsed with a grunt, the kerosene can clattering beside him. Aaron quickly checked to ensure the man was no longer a threat, then rushed to the smoldering roof with a bucket of water from the well. After dousing the small fire, he hurried back inside and down to the root cellar. The scene that greeted him stole his breath away. Sarah lay on the blankets, her face contorted in pain but also showing a determination he had always admired in her. Between her legs, visible beneath her raised skirts, was the crown of their baby's head. "Aaron," she gasped, relief flooding her features. "The baby's coming now, I can't stop it." He knelt beside her, taking her hand. "You don't have to stop it, darling. I'm here now." Despite having delivered foals and calves, Aaron felt utterly unprepared for the miracle unfolding before him. Yet instinct and love guided his actions as he positioned himself to help bring their child into the world. "Push when you're ready, Sarah," he encouraged, his voice steady despite the turmoil of emotions within him. Sarah bore down with all her strength, a primal scream tearing from her throat as she pushed. Aaron watched in awe as more of the baby's head emerged. "That's it, Sarah. I can see our baby. One more big push." Drawing on reserves of strength she didn't know she possessed, Sarah pushed again. With a rush of fluid and a tiny cry that was the most beautiful sound Aaron had ever heard, their child slipped into his waiting hands, a perfect, red-faced baby girl with a tuft of dark hair like her mother's. "We have a daughter," Aaron whispered, tears streaming unashamedly down his face as he quickly wrapped the infant in a clean cloth and placed her on Sarah's chest. "She's beautiful, Sarah, just like you." Sarah's exhausted face transformed with joy as she cradled their daughter. "Hello, little one," she murmured, counting tiny fingers and toes. "You certainly know how to make an entrance." The peaceful moment was shattered by the sound of returning hoofbeats. Aaron's head snapped up, his hand moving instinctively to his gun. "They're coming back," he said grimly. "And they won't be happy to find their friend." Sarah clutched the baby tighter. "What are we going to do?" Aaron thought quickly. "The tunnel leads to the barn. If we can get there, we can take the wagon and make for town." "I don't know if I can walk, Aaron." "You won't have to." He gathered her in his arms once more. The baby nestled between them and began making his way through the narrow earthen tunnel. It was a tight fit, especially carrying his wife and newborn child, but desperation lent him strength as he half crawled through the darkness. They emerged into the barn just as shouts of anger erupted from the direction of the cabin. Cole and his remaining men had discovered their missing comrade and realized they'd been duped. "Check the barn," Cole's voice carried clearly in the still afternoon air. Aaron worked quickly, helping Sarah and the baby into the bed of the wagon and covering them with blankets and empty feed sacks. He harnessed his second horse, a sturdy bay mare, to the wagon while leaving Thunder saddled and ready nearby. The barn door splintered as a boot kicked through it. Aaron drew his Colt and fired, forcing the outlaw to retreat. "It's over, Richardson," Cole called out. "You've killed 2 of my men. There's nowhere left to run." Aaron knew he needed to create a diversion. With Sarah and the baby hidden in the wagon, he mounted Thunder and prepared for a desperate gambit. "I'm coming out, Cole," he shouted. "Just don't hurt my wife." With that, he burst from the barn's side door on Thunder, firing his Winchester as he rode. The sudden appearance and gunfire sent the outlaws diving for cover, giving Aaron precious seconds. He circled wide, drawing their attention and fire away from the barn, then veered sharply back. In the momentary confusion, he leaped from Thunder, slapped the horse's flank to send him running empty-saddled toward the hills, and darted back into the barn. The outlaws, seeing the riderless horse, assumed Aaron had been hit and fell from the saddle. "After him," Cole ordered, and 2 riders set off in pursuit of Thunder. Inside the barn, Aaron climbed onto the wagon and took the reins. "Hold on, Sarah," he whispered, and with a flick of the lines, urged the bay mare through the back entrance of the barn and down a seldom-used trail that skirted the edge of their property. Cole, left alone at the homestead, realized too late that he'd been deceived again. By the time he discovered the tunnel and understood what had happened, Aaron had put considerable distance between the wagon and their pursuers. The journey to Trinidad was arduous. Every bump and jolt caused Sarah to wince in pain, but she remained remarkably stoic, focusing on keeping their newborn daughter warm and secure against her breast. The baby, despite her dramatic entry into the world, seemed content, nursing readily when offered the opportunity during a brief stop by a creek. "What shall we name her?" Aaron asked as he helped Sarah drink from a canteen, his eyes constantly scanning their back trail for signs of pursuit. Sarah looked down at the tiny face peeking from the blankets. "Abigail," she said softly. "Abigail Hope Richardson, because she gave us hope when all seemed lost." Aaron smiled, tenderness momentarily replacing the vigilant hardness in his eyes. "Abigail Hope it is." He touched the baby's cheek gently. "Welcome to the world, little one. Your pa's sorry about all the excitement on your birthday." They reached Trinidad as dusk was settling over the town. Aaron drove directly to Dr. Hoffman's home and office on Commercial Street, the mayor's hooves clattering on the packed dirt of the main thoroughfare. Several townspeople turned to stare at the disheveled, blood-spattered man driving a wagon containing what appeared to be a pile of feed sacks. Dr. Hoffman himself emerged from his office as Aaron pulled the wagon to a halt. The physician was a portly German immigrant with a reputation for competence that drew patients from miles around. "Mr. Richardson." "What in God's name? Outlaws raided our homestead," Aaron explained quickly, pulling back the coverings to reveal Sarah and the baby. "Sarah went into labor during the attack. The baby was born in our root cellar about 3 hours ago." Dr. Hoffman's professional demeanor took over immediately. He called for his wife to assist and helped carry Sarah into his examining room. As Aaron turned to follow, he noticed Sheriff Thomas Taylor approaching from the direction of the jailhouse. "Richardson, that you? What's all this about outlaws?" The sheriff was a tall, lean man with a salt and pepper mustache and a perpetually suspicious squint. Jasper Cole and his gang, Aaron explained tersely. They hit our place this afternoon. 5 of them. I got 2, but Cole and the others were still after us when we escaped. The sheriff's eyes widened. Cole's gang has been causing havoc all through this territory. You're lucky to be alive. He glanced at the wagon. Your wife, inside with the doctor. She had our baby during the raid. The sheriff whistled low. That's quite a story. Let me gather a posse. We'll ride out at first light and see if we can pick up their trail. Aaron nodded gratefully, then hurried inside to be with Sarah and Abigail. Dr. Hoffman was examining the infant while his wife helped Sarah into a clean nightgown. You delivered this child yourself, Doctor? Hoffman asked, an impressed tone in his accented voice. Aaron nodded, suddenly feeling the full weight of the day's events crashing down on him. Had no choice. Well, you did a fine job. Mother and daughter are both healthy, though Mrs. Richardson will need rest and care for some time. The doctor handed Abigail back to Sarah, who cradled the infant with a weary smile. Can they stay here tonight? Aaron asked. Of course. We have a room prepared for such cases, but what about you? You look ready to collapse yourself. Aaron shook his head. I need to go back with the sheriff's posse. Cole and his men might still be at our homestead. Sarah looked up sharply. Aaron, no, you've done enough. Stay here with us. He knelt beside her, taking her hand. If I don't go, they might burn everything we've worked for. Besides, men like Cole don't give up easily. As long as they're free, we won't be safe. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, but she nodded in understanding. It was one of the things Aaron loved most about her ability to face hard truths with courage. Promise me you'll be careful, she whispered. I promise. He kissed her gently, then placed a feather-light kiss on Abigail's forehead. I'll be back before you know it. Dawn found Aaron riding with Sheriff Taylor and 6 other men, including Sarah's brother Andrew Pearson, who had insisted on joining the posse upon hearing what had happened. They followed the trail back to the Richardson homestead, finding it eerily quiet in the morning light. The cabin stood intact, though one wall was scorched from the attempted arson. The body of the outlaw Aaron had shot still lay where it had fallen. Of Cole and the others, there was no sign. They've cleared out, Sheriff Taylor observed, dismounting to examine tracks around the property. Headed south from the looks of it, probably making for the New Mexico territory. Aaron surveyed his home with mixed emotions, relief that it was still standing warred with anger at the violation of the place he'd built with such care. We need to go after them, Sheriff. They won't stop raiding and killing. The sheriff nodded grimly. I agree, Richardson, but we need to be smart about it. These men are dangerous. They buried the dead outlaw in an unmarked grave on the edge of Aaron's property, then set about tracking Cole and his remaining men. The trail led them south as expected, toward the border with New Mexico territory. Late in the afternoon of the second day, they spotted smoke rising from a campsite in a sheltered canyon. Approaching cautiously, they confirmed it was Cole's gang, now joined by 2 additional rough-looking men. Reinforcements gathered along the way. We'll wait until dark, Sheriff Taylor decided. Then surround the camp and take them by surprise. The plan worked initially. Under cover of darkness, the posse positioned themselves around the outlaws' camp, then called for their surrender. What followed was a chaotic gunfight, muzzle flashes illuminating the night as men sought cover among the rocks and scrub. Aaron found himself pinned down behind a boulder, exchanging fire with an outlaw he couldn't clearly see. Nearby, Sarah's brother Andrew was engaged in a similar standoff. The sheriff and 2 other men were attempting to circle behind the outlaw's position. In the confusion, Jasper Cole himself appeared suddenly from behind a juniper tree, his revolver aimed directly at Aaron. Richardson, he snarled. "I've been looking forward to this." Aaron dove sideways as Cole fired, the bullet grazing his arm instead of finding his heart. He rolled, coming up with his Colt leveled, and fired twice. The first shot missed, but the second caught Cole high in the chest, staggering him backward. The outlaw leader remained standing, raising his gun for another shot, when Andrew Pearson's rifle cracked from the side. Cole spun and fell, his final shot going wild into the night sky. With their leader down, the fight went out of the remaining outlaws. By dawn, the survivors were in custody, bound for the jail in Trinidad and eventual trial for their numerous crimes. Aaron returned to town 3 days after he had left, weary but triumphant. He found Sarah at the doctor's residence, already showing signs of recovery, with Abigail contentedly sleeping nearby in a borrowed cradle. "It's over," he told her, taking her hands in his. "Cole is dead, and the rest of his gang will hang for their crimes." Relief flooded Sarah's face. "Thank God, and you're safe." Aaron nodded, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at the bandage on his arm where Cole's bullet had grazed him. "You're hurt," Sarah said, immediately concerned. "It's nothing, just a scratch." He smiled, sitting beside her on the bed. "How are my girls?" "We're well. Dr. Hoffman says I'm healing nicely, and Abigail is a perfect baby, hardly cries at all except when she's hungry." Aaron gazed at his daughter, marveling at how tiny and perfect she was. Hard to believe she had entered the world in such dramatic circumstances just days ago. "When can we go home?" Sarah asked softly. "Soon. I need to repair the damage to the cabin first. Andrew and some of the men from town have offered to help. We should have it ready in a week or so." Sarah nodded, then hesitated. "Will we be safe there, Aaron, after everything that's happened?" He understood her fear. The attack had shattered the sense of security they had built together. "We'll be safer now with Cole gone, but if you'd rather move closer to town, we can consider it." She shook her head firmly. "No, that land is ours. We've worked too hard for it. I won't let fear drive us away from our home." Pride swelled in Aaron's chest at his wife's courage. "That's my Sarah, always the strongest of us both." The following weeks brought healing and rebuilding. True to their word, Andrew Pearson and several men from Trinidad helped Aaron repair the cabin, strengthen the barn, and even construct a better fence around the property. Sarah's parents, Martin and Elizabeth Pearson, insisted on staying to help their daughter and new granddaughter settle back into home life. When they finally departed, leaving the young family alone for the first time since the raid, Aaron found Sarah standing on the porch in the evening light, Abigail sleeping against her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "About how different things might have been," she said quietly. "If you hadn't been here that day, if you hadn't fought so bravely, if you hadn't built that tunnel." Aaron put his arm around her. "But I was here, and we made it through together. That's what matters." Sarah leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "I was so frightened, Aaron, not just of the outlaws, but of bringing our child into the world in such circumstances." "You were magnificent," he said honestly. "I've never seen such courage." She smiled up at him. "We make a good team, don't we? The best." He kissed her tenderly, then gazed down at Abigail's sleeping face. "And now we're 3. As summer bloomed across the Colorado Territory, the Richardson homestead flourished. The ordeal of Abigail's birth became a story told with increasing embellishment in Trinidad, how Aaron Richardson had fought off Jasper Cole's entire gang single-handedly while delivering his own child. Aaron always corrected these exaggerations, insisting that Sarah was the true hero of the tale. Their brush with death had changed them both in subtle ways. Aaron became more vigilant, always scanning the horizon for potential threats, while Sarah developed a new appreciation for the simple pleasures of daily life. Abigail's first smile, the wildflowers blooming near the creek, the sound of Aaron's laughter. Visitors to the Richardson place often commented on the unusual modifications Aaron had made to their home: additional gun ports, disguised as decorative elements, a new root cellar with multiple exits, even a small lookout platform built into a cottonwood tree that offered views across their entire property. "Some might call it paranoid," Aaron admitted to Sarah one evening as they sat on their porch swing watching the sunset, Abigail playing with wooden blocks at their feet. "But I'll never again be caught unprepared." Sarah reached for his hand. "It's not paranoid to protect what you love." As Abigail grew from infant to toddler, Trinidad itself was changing. The railroad had finally reached the town, bringing new settlers, businesses, and a greater sense of connection to the wider world. The lawless days of the territory were gradually giving way to a more ordered society, though dangers still existed for those living on isolated homesteads. In the spring of 1878, nearly 2 years after Abigail's dramatic birth, Sarah discovered she was expecting again. This time, the pregnancy progressed without incident, and on a clear November morning, Aaron Alexander Richardson, Jr., was born in their bedroom with Dr. Hoffman in attendance and Abigail watching wide-eyed from her grandmother's lap. "A son," Aaron said in wonder, holding the sturdy infant who already showed signs of his father's strong build. "A son to go with our perfect daughter." Life settled into a rhythm of seasons and growth. Aaron expanded their herd of cattle, built a larger barn, and eventually purchased the adjoining property when old Jim Tillman decided to move back east to live with his daughter. Sarah planted an orchard, established a thriving vegetable garden, and became known throughout the county for her preserves and pies, which won ribbons at the territorial fair 3 years running. As the children grew, so did the legend of their family's stand against the coal gang. When Abigail was 5, she overheard some boys in town telling an exaggerated version of the story and came home demanding to know if her father really had shot 20 outlaws while her mother fought off wolves. "Where do they come up with such nonsense?" Sarah laughed as she tucked her daughter into bed that night. "People need heroes, I suppose," Aaron replied, "but you and I know the truth." "And what is the truth, Pa?" Abigail asked sleepily. Aaron smoothed her dark hair, so like her mother's. "The truth is that your mother is the bravest person I've ever known, and you arrived in this world surrounded by more love and courage than most people see in a lifetime." By 1886, 10 years after the raid, the Richardson family had grown to include 4 children. After Abigail and Aaron Jr. came twins Emma and Elijah, who brought double the joy and mischief to the household. Their property had expanded to over 300 acres, with a new 2-story home replacing the original cabin, which they preserved as a reminder of their beginnings. On the 10th anniversary of Abigail's birth, they held a special celebration. Friends and family gathered from miles around, including Sheriff Taylor, now retired, Dr. Hoffman and his wife, and Sarah's parents and siblings. The day was filled with food, music, and storytelling. As evening approached, Aaron found himself standing in the exact spot where he had once fought for his family's survival. The land looked different now, tamed and productive, with fields of grain waving in the breeze and fruit trees heavy with early blossoms. "A penny for your thoughts," Sarah said, coming to stand beside him. At 36, she was still as beautiful as the day he'd met her, perhaps more so, with the quiet confidence of a woman who had faced life's worst challenges and emerged stronger. "I was thinking about how much has changed," he replied, taking her hand. "And how much remains the same." She followed his gaze across their property, understanding his meaning. Our love, that's what remains. That's what saved us, he corrected gently. When Cole and his men came, when Abigail decided to make her appearance at the worst possible moment, it was our love for each other that got us through. Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if they had chosen another homestead that day? If we had been spared that ordeal? Aaron considered this. I think we might have had an easier road, but perhaps not a stronger bond. That day showed us what we were capable of together. Later that night, with their children asleep and the house quiet, Aaron and Sarah sat before the fireplace in their new home, a quilt that Sarah had made from scraps of their children's baby clothes spread across their laps. I found something today, Aaron said, reaching into his pocket. I was checking the old cabin for repairs, and this fell from between the logs. He opened his palm to reveal a flattened, tarnished bullet. I think this is one of the shots Cole's men fired that day. It must have lodged in the wood all these years. Sarah took it, turning the misshapen piece of lead in her fingers. Such a small thing to carry so much potential for harm. Yet it didn't harm us, Aaron pointed out. We prevailed. She returned the bullet to him, watching as he carefully placed it in a small wooden box he kept on the mantel, a repository for significant mementos of their life together. You think Abigail will ever truly understand what happened the day she was born? Sarah asked. Aaron smiled. Perhaps not entirely. Some experiences can't be fully conveyed through stories, but she knows she came into this world surrounded by love strong enough to overcome danger, and that's the most important part. Sarah nodded, then stood and held out her hand. Come to bed, my hero. He rose, taking her hand. After you, my heroine. As they climbed the stairs to their bedroom, leaving behind the small bullet that symbolized both danger and deliverance, Aaron reflected on how that single day had shaped the course of their lives. The raid that might have destroyed everything had instead revealed the depth of their courage and commitment to each other. Outside, the Colorado night spread star-studded above their home, the same stars that had witnessed their struggle and survival a decade earlier. The land that had once seemed so wild and threatening now embraced their homestead like a protective hand. Trinidad had grown from a frontier outpost to a proper town, and their children were growing up in a world more settled and secure than the one their parents had faced. Yet Aaron knew that life would always bring challenges, expected and unexpected. What mattered was facing them together, with the same determination and love that had seen them through that fateful April day when death and life had arrived simultaneously at their door. In the years that followed, as their children grew toward adulthood, and their homestead expanded into one of the most prosperous ranches in the county, Aaron and Sarah Richardson became living legends in Trinidad. Not for the embellished tales of gunfights and dramatic births that still circulated, but for the enduring partnership. They embodied a love that had been forged in crisis and tempered by time into something unbreakable. When Abigail married at 20, her father took her aside before walking her down the aisle. Your mother and I were tested early in our marriage, he told her. It showed us what truly matters. May you and Thomas find that truth without requiring such a harsh lesson. I already know what matters, Pa, Abigail replied with the quiet wisdom she had inherited from her mother. It's love that's strong enough to fight for and brave enough to bring new life into the world even when surrounded by danger. Aaron smiled, recognizing Sarah's influence in their daughter's words. Then you're already wiser than I was at your age. On the 30th anniversary of the raid and Abigail's birth, when Aaron and Sarah were in their 50s and grandparents several times over, they returned to the site of their original cabin, now preserved as a family monument. Their children and grandchildren gathered around as Aaron recounted the true story of that day, neither minimizing the danger nor exaggerating his role. "Your grandmother," he concluded, his arm around Sarah's still slender waist, "brought life into the world at the very moment others were trying to bring death to our doorstep. There's a lesson in that if you're wise enough to see it." "What lesson, Grandpa?" asked Abigail's oldest son, a serious 10-year-old with his grandfather's blue eyes. Sarah answered before Aaron could. "That life and love always triumph in the end if we have the courage to fight for them." As twilight settled over the Colorado plains, painting the landscape in hues of gold and purple, the Richardson family made their way back to the main house, leaving Aaron and Sarah alone at the site of their first home. 30 years, Aaron mused, surveying the land that had become their legacy. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday." Sarah took his hand, her fingers still strong despite the years of hard work. "And sometimes it feels like another lifetime entirely. You ever regret it, coming out here with me, facing all the hardships?" She looked at him with the same steadfast love that had carried them through 3 decades of marriage. "Not for a single moment. Every trial we faced brought us closer, made us stronger." Aaron nodded, understanding completely. Their life together had been built on that foundation, a love tested by fire on the very day it had borne its first fruit. Everything that came after, both joys and sorrows, had been shaped by the knowledge that they could withstand whatever life threw at them, as long as they faced it together. As they walked hand in hand toward home, where their family awaited, Aaron reflected that some stories don't end so much as continue through generations. The tale of a desperate gunfight and a miraculous birth on a spring day in 1876 was just the beginning of their story, the opening chapter in a saga of love, courage, and family that would live on long after they were gone. And in that continuation lay the true victory over those who had sought to destroy them. Life had prevailed, love had endured, and their legacy would stretch far beyond the borders of the land they had fought to protect.